Thank you for having me, BOTI, again this year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to Stockholm this year, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to be there, actually. Well, the first thing I have to say to all of you, and especially to the organization and the organizing committee, is congratulations with this 10th anniversary. I'm currently in the United States, little time delay, but I'm, well, hopefully a little bit with you. And for this year's edition, I like to talk about localization and recycling, and maybe also a little bit about reuse. Still, of course, TXTOMedia is about automating the creation, maintenance, and localization of video, and I'd like to explain a little bit the concept and, of course, also its value. So that takes me to you today. Still, instructions, support materials, training materials. That's of course the nature of our business anyway. And well, I had to for the people who never saw us being at BOTI before. Text-to-media actually turns existing structured content, written documentation materials into video. So this is of course the basis of what we do. The same content that you normally print or save as PDFs is now actually leveraged, and it's actually the source of creating videos. And the whole idea is, of course, to have that single source of media, for instance, in your component content management system, and still use it for print and PDF or EPUB, but also that same information now is used to create videos. Um, Today, if you look at instruction and training, and you look at, okay, do people actually understand, remember what we trained them, let's say last week, or maybe even 3 months ago, or 6 months ago? Unfortunately, this is the average result of training material, of training efforts, and that's quite sad to read, of course. So a lot of the information that we provide during training and education gets lost, and that's the current state. And this is done by just classroom training or just reading manuals, etc. People forget, don't remember it exactly anymore, and this is done on the current state and the current type of materials. So a lot gets lost, right? More than 65% within a week, and after 6 months, well, almost everything is forgotten. And if you look at, okay, do people actually, before they go here or they train themselves or they read, they don't even like to do it. So they even go and they actually try to find videos because that's actually what they like to digest. And it's not only something that the audience likes to digest, but it's also something, and I will talk about it in a bit, it's also more, well, it derives better, and it also helps you actually to understand and remember the information better. And that's actually because of the fact and the whole idea about visual media. Now our brain is actually digesting this and understands it because it has a lot of conceptual information that goes with it. Of course, you actually see what's happening, you understand where it is happening, and that understanding also makes that it's easier for your brain because it's visual to remember it. So partly, and quite a big chunk of that bad news that I brought at the first slide, people don't even remember it anymore what you said and what they were trained about, is actually solved when you bring it in a more visual way. So that's the value of video for training and instruction purposes anyway. So video in itself is already important. But I said this presentation today is not about this concept of turning written documentation into video alone. Of course, it's our basis anyway, but also localization and what's the importance of localization for your instructional materials. Let me talk a little bit more about the importance of language, and especially the mother tongue, your native language. Um, to understand what is said and what you're taught, of course, already starts with how well were you educated in your own native mother tongue language. And here you already see that education is not always given in that right language to people, and it's very important. So 40% of the global population do not receive the education in their native language or mother tongue. And that's because we think, in a lot of cases, especially in training, support materials, manuals, both within the company as well as to end users, that everybody speaks English or Spanish or whatsoever. But that's typically not the case. If you look at the size, how many people do actually speak what language, and especially native languages, you see actually that English is here. About 335 million people have that as their native language, but it's heavily outperformed, for instance, by Chinese. But even if you look at Spanish or Portuguese or Arabic, they're quite important languages in this world. And if you compare it to how we tend to publish content in languages online, and especially this is web content, and of course it might be a bit different than what your company does or what we do in documentation. More than 50% of the content that we create online is English content, and that is quite a gap between, if you look at population, and if you look at, of course, the availability of those languages online. This is only just general online information. This is not even if you look at the specific instruction materials that are available online or in the books, etc., etc. Those figures might differ, but the thing I wanted to describe here is that there is a gap. It's often done English as a basis, and then smaller languages, well, they don't even get your localizations. And then I'm actually only talking about the written materials. So that written website, the text on the website, or that written documentation. But I'm here to talk about video, and that's a whole other story. How to bridge that gap. Talking about localization and recycling and reuse, this is, I think, how you can bridge that gap. So if you currently look at your systems and the way you create documentation for print PDF and whatever publications you're making, you must at least have heard about component content management solutions, I assume, your documentation systems, or maybe you use Word, doesn't really matter, but that's the basis of where these instructions start. And it's also in most cases, the environment where you tend to take everything to localization. So you start to translate your English documentation or your Swedish documentation into these other languages. And that's actually a great start, and that's a great source to have, because from there, not only that base language, the mother tongue language of your documentation, so to speak, but also these target languages, is something you can bring to speech, text to speech. So you have now English audio, Swedish audio, French audio, etc. And that's actually the starting point of making videos, because the audio already has the timeline, starting at 0 second, going to the end of your audio track or video track. And that's the important step. So as soon as you already create localized written content, it's not too hard to bring that to a localized audio track or audio track, snippets of audio. And that brings me to the recycling part as well, because now, if we look at, this is for instance a sample of a EPUB of some content, of a procedure on how to replace an ink cartridge. On the one hand, you have all the text and the steps in the procedure, and on the other hand,
turn on the printer.
A piece of video.
Open the front door. Lift the cartridge access door.
And actually,
wait until the carriage is idle and silent before you can.
Is that the text that is written here is pronounced by a synthesized voice to you, and that took time, right? So that's that timeline. And within your documentation, you might have, don't have, images, which are placeholders connected to those pieces of text. So there is already a relation between a media asset, an image, and a piece of text. So there's also a relation now between that audio file, that little snippet of that sentence that was pronounced, in this case in English, and that image. So that's step one. The relations can still exist. The timing will differ because pronouncing the same information in Bahasa or in Latin or Hebrew or whatever is different, of course, but the connection with the media assets can, of course, stay there. And that's very helpful for localization and recycling the media assets you have. So reusing those fragments, which tend to be an effort to create and also expensive to create. That could be, right? And that's exactly what I try to say. So if your sources are structured as 1000D, data, XML, docbook files, things like that, or even you upload it in an XML file, Excel file, it's still a bit of structure. You can create all these kinds of videos.
Drum motor should be installed at distance x2.
So still you listen to voice.
Place two poly V belts on the drum motor.
And you can imagine that this is pronounced in Japanese as well.
Mount the drum motor
this is a
into
media
the frame.
asset, a fragment
Slide
that
the
is
cable through the
connected to
channel.
that one step in your document.
Use
the same here at those samples of HP.
Lightly press down on the ink cartridge to release it,
And as you
and
can
then
see,
pull the
this
ink
is a
cartridge
second
out of its
fragment.
slot.
So those are the components, the little media assets that you can recycle for localization purposes. It doesn't matter if that visual is connected to Japanese or to English. The timing of that fragment will be set to the voice. So if the Japanese takes a bit longer or the German takes a little bit longer than the English, that fragment will last a little bit longer. But that doesn't matter. That's something about editing. That's something you can definitely automate. You don't have to do that editing manually. The result will be that you recycle all these assets, if it's still images, but also you recycle all your effort that you already did for print and PDF, because that text on screen, but also that text that goes to speech, was already there. So you reuse it, you recycle it to localize it to videos and to actually to create localized videos. And the beauty now is that if you do this with your CCMS, your component content management solution as the basis, you also recycle when you version your videos. So when you have an update, a content update, still all the relations and the connections between this updated topic, this maybe you misspelled a word or you want to make it more clear, that sentence, all the connections still stay in place. So yes, there will be a new audio snippet of your new sentence, but that sentence was already connected to a video fragment. So now the whole system can actually recreate the video without you doing anything. You just get a new version of your video, which is again in sync with the document in your component content management system. So to explain it a little bit more, well, maybe more graphical, this is how it works. So you have your document, your structured document, its sections and topics and steps in topics and stuff like that. And within the systems, they all become components. They are all little, a step is a component, an image is a component, everything is components connected to each other for reuse in different manuals, for instance, in different books, whatever your system calls it, in different publications. But now what we extend to it is that we bring that text to speech. And those images are already media assets, which you could replace. It's not needed, but you can replace them for video fragments or pieces of animation. You can also leave it as is, as being images. You get what we call animated video, pictures which are synced on explanation in audio. But when you replace them with a video fragment, you get, of course, a live action video or an animation. And in the end of the day, the same publication or book, as you call it, becomes a video title. And actually the text has now its audio version. The image has now maybe a nephew being that video fragment. And that's how everything stays in place. So we extend to the same concept of your CCMS or structured content solution. So that's how it works. So you have your, let's say, base US English version. The media assets are clean, there is no voice to it. When you filmed it, there is no editing done, there's no text on screen on these assets. So everything now on top of it is, so the audio but also text on screen, is actually this content that's already stored in your CCMS. And since you also do your translations, that XML file, the data file, the docbook file is sent off for translation, comes back in your system or in our system, you also have for instance, everything in German. So the timing will be based on the German audio, but those assets are recycled. And nobody is filming, opening the door of that printer for Germany because, yeah, well, they already had it, right? It's the same printer. So that's actually the whole recycling. So it makes creation of video, localization of video, and versioning of those videos, of course, far faster and easy to do. So you can really start creating these videos at scale. Yeah, so there's a production, your topic. The production in this case exists in two languages in the system, in that US English and in that German base. There are now two languages for that one production. Very simple sample here. And that's what you get. So at first, the system will actually generate your content, your topic, as what we call a preview video or an animated video. That's all. And that it's nothing more than your styling, the timing, the audio, the text, the images. That's what we call that preview or animated video. And now in the system, you can actually replace those assets, those images for video snippets. And that's very helpful because these are now these rough cut materials, those little fragments without audio, without text, nothing, just a turning roller or a person that opens the cover of that printer or whatever it is. It can all be filmed by professionals, by your iPhone. That doesn't really matter. That's more the nature of your videos. And as soon as you replace them, you can now actually render the videos as live action videos based on your English data file or XML file. And you get the timings of the audio in that English language with that same clean asset, that fragment. Or, and this is now the German version, and you see that the timing differs. Now you will listen to the German voice. You will get German titles on the screen, etc. But still, it's recycling that clean asset. So this is a way to, well, I think manage localized videos, and not only for creation, but of course also for maintenance of those videos. And then the end result is indeed things like this.
Installation of the return roller. Check the spec for the type and amount of return rollers.
Now, for instance, or in Europe.
Einbau des Rücklaufrollers. Überprüfen Sie die Angaben zur Art und Anzahl der Rücklaufrollen.
Now, etc. Right? And you can do this, of course, in as many languages as you want, and it's all text-based at the end of the day. So that was the source. So, well, this is what I wanted to share with you. Localization, recycling, reuse. It makes it all quicker, it makes it manageable, and it also brings down not only the time to market of these kinds of videos, but also the costs, which is of course very important. You only create media asset once, no post-production, you bring everything to the market as soon as, well, both your localized text content is ready and as soon as you have your media assets, and then you have all your languages at once. It really helps you to localize quick and to stay up to date on the content as well. In case of questions, well, please reach out to me, although I'm not in Stockholm, as I said. We do have the virtual booth online, and also you can always reach me by emailing me, Wouter, WOUTER, at TXTOMedia.com. And, well, enjoy Stockholm. Hopefully next year I'll be with you again. Thank you very much.